Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, step right up for another episode of Cardboard Insanity.
Shut up and sit down.
And of course, the Avenger
I'm
is
still chewing. And this is not fair.
That's the way to start off this monumental pair of episodes with you still chewing.
But you did this on purpose.
I did. Well, as soon as you looked at me, and I was like, and that's my cue.
Damn you.
So,
Okay.
welcome back, everybody.
Yeah, welcome
It's
back.
been 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks.
At
I don't
least
even
3
know.
weeks.
At least 3 weeks. We have a lot to talk about because a
we
lot
do.
of things happened. A lot of things
Been a
happened.
little
Let's go
crazy.
backwards. So last week we were in New Jersey. We went to visit some family,
Yep.
and the reason for that trip is because on June 11th, this wonderful horsey woman decided to marry me, and we
did.
got married in a surprise ambush wedding
That was
at our
fabulous.
house, which was really, really cool. And now I feel, oh, hold on, I'm getting the feels. Whew, okay. I think I'll be fine.
You're going to be okay?
Thank God it's not on video.
Yeah.
No one can hear my tears as I sold myself out. But yeah, we got married. Isn't that exciting?
I know.
So now she's Mrs. or am I Mr. Horsey Avenger?
You are Mr. Horsey Avenger, I think.
And Squeaky Bandanas is now officially my adopted child.
Yep.
Oh, great. Oh. Just take the good with the bad.
Yeah, I think she made sure that you understood that, too.
She did. It
Yeah.
was pretty funny. She was hamming it up at the wedding.
That was hilarious.
But it was really cool. We invited a bunch of people over. We told them we were having a cookout, and we've gotten into records lately. So we're like, hey, just bring over records. We're going to play records. And the Horsey Avenger tricked her friend into bringing a camera because she told her I wanted to learn how to use it because I have
Right.
I have a DSLR that I haven't learned how to use yet. And
She's a great amateur photographer.
yeah, and you know, we're all hanging out, t-shirts, shorts, drinking from the tequila fountain, and our minister walks up in a suit.
Yeah.
and Matt looks at us and says, "Hey, didn't you do my dad's wedding a couple weeks ago?"
Right.
And then everyone kind of turned and looked, and we're like, "Surprise!"
Yeah, and I'm going to go change now.
Yeah, like we have to go get changed.
Yeah.
So it was perfect because only I think 3 of the people that were there knew what was happening. And because we had a couple friends that just wouldn't be able to come if we didn't tell them, so they had to make sure they get the
Right.
time off. And it was pretty awesome.
It was wonderful.
Yeah,
I loved
it. Was. And then we proceeded to party till about 1 o'clock in the morning, which for us is outstandingly late. Most people
Yes.
are like 1 o'clock. You're just getting started. No,
No.
there's just only 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock on my clock. That's a mouthful. Don't sass me, people. So we went to New Jersey for the victory tour, and to tell
Yeah.
my family who did not know.
Right, and the fact that our friends actually kept it
Everybody
off
kept it a secret.
Facebook or Twitter was just
Yep.
a miracle in
I
itself.
don't think I told anybody in the Twitter world. I don't think anybody knew.
No, you didn't.
No. So very exciting that that the news is finally out and now it's official.
Feels good.
Right? It
Yeah.
does. And so we went, and my sister was going to be in town for a few days because she's moving to Denver to be a neurologist out there at a medical group. So this was going to be sort of like a going away party for her. And we sort of stole her thunder.
We kind of hijacked it a
We're
little
like,
bit.
oh, we brought champagne to celebrate Caitlin going away. And then we handed everybody the champagne flutes that we basically made that had our names and the date on it. And everyone's looking at this going, what?
What-
We're
what?
like, oh, yeah, so here's to Caitlin moving away and to us because we
Us
got
getting
married. And
married.
it's like, what? It's really astounding. People can't actually believe that it happened when you tell them. So it was super cool.
Yeah.
My friend Luke passed his banking exam. That was going to, I don't know. I honest to God don't know the particulars of it, but it was going to be something that was going to allow him to sell other types of securities and things like that. So we brought champagne over there. He's like, oh, you even brought champagne flutes. Yeah, sure
Yeah.
did, buddy. You going to read that?
It's like you didn't need to go all fancy on us.
Yeah, no, it was pretty perfect. And naturally, we hung out with family, but also we made sure we got some gaming in.
We sure did.
So we went to Brian's house and gamed with Brian and Laszlo and Brian's wife, Nicole, and their daughter, Sydney.
Sydney. Mm-hmm.
Yep. We played Mysterium and a couple rounds of Codenames.
Yes.
And we did Codenames very differently. We did half. Some people will know what this is, but if you don't know what Domo is, he's this Japanese like puppet thing that kind of looks like a fudgesicle.
I didn't know.
I only know it because
Domo was.
I knew it from Sydney. But so he's I don't even know, he's like this monster. So they made this caption card game. It's sort of like a party game back in the day. But we used those pictures,
like
half
and
pictures
half.
and half words, and played Codenames with it.
Yeah.
And it was really, really cool and very hard.
And it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. So I think the moral of the story is that Codenames works with literally anything.
It does. And having to associate like pictures and words,
Yeah.
that was just a brain melter.
It was a brain melter. It must have been very hard. You could watch Brian and Laszlo trying to give clues to the teams, just like almost sweating, like, oh, you guys are never going to get this. And then you would guess something and you'd guess the wrong thing that would actually be one of your things, but it's not what they wanted you to guess. And you're like, well, we'll take it.
Yep.
It was definitely a cool experience playing that game. Our game of Mysterium was very good.
Yeah. We played Concordia.
Yes, we played Concordia with 5, which was
That was really, really
outstanding.
good.
Yeah, just that game has climbed very high up my list. It's definitely in my top 10 favorites now.
I would agree.
That was just, it was such a robust experience, jockeying for position, trying to make sure you could get the cards you wanted to get, which was actually harder than it seemed like it would be. It was brilliant. And then we played a new to us game that we got sent a review copy of, which was Tyrants of the Underdark.
Yes.
Which is the new Dungeons and Dragons game from Gale Force 9. Our first play of that was outstanding.
Yeah,
it is vicious.
It actually turned out really, really good.
It is backstabby. It is evil. It is highly confrontational. It's also a deck builder that I think you could win without necessarily being too confrontational. I only one play, but from our first play, I just see there's so much game in that box.
I definitely want to play that again.
Yeah, me too. And we will, because we'll be reviewing that at some point. I'm very curious as to how it plays as a 2-player game. I will say that graphic design-wise, it's one of the ugliest things I've seen in a long time.
That's true. I mean, there were a couple points that we found right off the bat.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, but that said,
even with that, it was a lot of fun to play.
I'm a function over form kind of guy. I could really care what anything looks like as long as it's good. And so that game definitely passed the litmus test for me.
Right.
And frankly, I don't even think I would have cared if it was prettier. It wouldn't have made the game any different.
Art is a bonus. If there's beautiful art, I can appreciate it, and it's definitely a bonus, but it's not going to distract me from or keep me away from playing a game.
Yep, agreed. So the following day, we went over to Jeff's house from the Long View and played some games with Jeff. We had major doggy chaos.
Yeah.
Squeaky Bandanas did not get along with Low Doggy. It created a god-awfully stressful situation that
for everybody.
we made the best of, but it was not easy. Luckily, the next day, we were able to go hang out there again, and Lloyd was there this time. And we didn't take our doggy. My mom was kind enough to watch our doggy. So we actually got to enjoy our time.
Yes.
It was really just the dog. The dog situation was just, it was so rough. Rough. Get it? That was accidental, but I'll take it. It was so rough. But we went back on Friday night, sans doggy, and played Plums.
I know. I was so excited when
Plums was so
I
good.
saw that on the kitchen table. I'm like, and we're playing that.
Yep. It was so good.
And I think Jeff said he had just literally gotten it an hour before.
Yeah, it came in that day. And he had read the rules because he was like, oh, good, we'll play this tonight. Because they were going to play it anyway. But when we showed up, trick-taking games are usually better with more.
Yep.
So they were very happy to have us there to play that game. And we were thrilled to play it. And did we play anything else after Plums? We did, didn't we?
We played
Battle Cruisers? Battle Cruisers.
Ladies and
Gentlemen.
Ladies and Lords. Ladies and Lords?
Ladies and Gentlemen.
No, I'm
Is it
pretty sure
Ladies
it's
and
Ladies and Lords.
That's
Is that Squeaky like hacking up a hairball over there?
Okay.
Good Lord. Sounds serious. Does she need an assist? Is she gonna live?
Powder, you gonna live? This is an award-winning podcast, Powder.
Right. Good Lord.
Are you through?
Nope. This is what happens when she doesn't have a bandana on. Okay,
She's looking at me like, don't laugh at me.
Yeah.
That's going to make for some great radio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ladies and Lords, I think that's what it was called.
Ladies and Lords.
Not a fan.
No.
No. I'd be happy if we never played that again. However, we did have fun.
Yes.
But we had fun despite the game.
We had fun because we were playing with great company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we played Battle Cruisers, which
Yes.
is the new... you've never played Eminent Domain, but it's in the Eminent Domain universe.
We do have Eminent... Don't
Nope.
we? No, we don't.
Nope, we have Among the Stars.
We have Among the Stars. Okay. Never mind.
Nope. Good try, though.
Yeah.
So we played that, and that is like a... sort of like Love Letter-ish in that you're playing one card and you're trying to outbluff. Everyone has the same card, so you're trying to sort of double think. What makes it really cool is that there's interchangeable cards in each
Yes.
deck, a huge number of interchangeable cards. And we played exactly one hand of it, but there's a huge number of cards you can just slot in. You can take one out, just replace them, do it randomly, however you want. Very, very clever idea. I liked it. That'd be one that I would play more if we had more opportunities to
Yes,
play multiplayer
definitely.
games, because it was definitely clever. This is fantastic. So I don't think. Oh, you finally got to play Ticket to Ride on Saturday
yes.
with Brandy and Steve.
Yes.
And we were. Well, I don't think it was Saturday.
That was Sunday.
And it was in the midst of a giant party. So my best friend and I may have had a few too many adult beverages, and Luke spilled a beer all over the Ticket to Ride.
He did.
It was kind of funny
towards the end.
Yeah, it was kind of funny when it happened that time we were here on our Sons of Anarchy game, because that should basically smell like beer.
Yep.
But Ticket to Ride Europe should probably not smell like beer.
Probably not.
But it was pretty
It does
funny.
now.
It was amazing. What was amazing is that Brandy didn't even get all that mad. She was just kind of
No.
like,
Yeah, she just kind of rolled her eyes. Like, yeah.
like you guys
Shook
are
her head.
idiots. So it was a whirlwind week.
So it was fun. I finally got to play that because everybody always starts out with Ticket to Ride. It's like, oh, that's the first game.
Yeah.
Besides Monopoly.
That's not, we don't talk about
we
that.
don't talk about that. But
Well, speaking of Monopoly, today's episode's a big deal because we get to tell everybody that we're now officially Mr. and Mrs. Horsey Avenger.
yes.
However, today's guest is. I always feel bad when I say that, because like everybody we talk to is awesome. We just have we're so lucky to have so many amazing people come in, but this okay. So to put it in perspective, Mark Maron's talked to hundreds of people on his show. However, when he got a chance to talk to Keith Richards, who is like his all-time idol, it was probably a bigger deal to him than talking to the president.
Right.
Like on a personal level.
Right.
Like, even though the president's the most important man in the world, when you get to talk to one of your heroes, someone whose art and work you just are enamored with, it's got to be, for him, that must have been amazing.
Yes.
Well, for this episode, I had the opportunity on the day before my birthday, back in the beginning of May, to talk with Reiner Knizia.
Yeah.
And that is who our guest is today.
Wow.
Yeah. So I kind of just got a little bit of a chill just actually saying that. So these two episodes are going to be the interview with Reiner Knizia, and I
can't wait to hear.
I've heard it.
But yeah,
I was there.
I wasn't. Usually, I'm here and I hear at least your half of it, and I can kind of piece it together
Right.
of what the conversation's about. But when you talk to Reiner Knizia, I was at work.
Right. I did it on a Friday morning because with him being in the UK, we were able to make the times work. So I did it like 7 o'clock in the morning. The day before my birthday, so it was one heck of a birthday treat.
Yeah.
So we've got that coming up, and I think on today's episode, we're going to air the review, the conversation Nah, we'll do that next week.
Okay.
On today's episode, we will do our review of Orongo.
Okay.
Next week, we will do the conversation we had with my mom. That was a review of Battle Line. Supposed to be a review of Battle Line. But it also turned into a discussion of Ra, because we had just played Ra.
Right.
And a little bit of a conversation about Orongo. But mostly Battle Line / Shot and Totten. So this week, we're going to review Reiner Knizia's newest game, Orongo. And next week, Ra / Battle Line / Shot and Totten / a little bit of Orongo / probably some other things in that conversation.
I'm sure there was.
And then we just sort of start talking about my mom's favorite games. Crazy lady.
It was a fun conversation.
It was something.
Yeah.
It was something. She's a hoot. So we've gone long already on this intro because we have a lot of content to get to, but we want to fill everybody in on where we've been and what we've been doing for the past couple weeks, because we know y'all missed us and we've missed you.
We are.
Now, I don't think we need any more of my jibba jabba. We'll just get right into listening to The Good Doctor.
Let's do it.
So here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is the day before my birthday. I'm recording this, and I am getting a special birthday present that I'm going to share with all of you Cardboard Insanity listeners. Coming all the way from apparently sunny England today is Dr. Reiner Knizia. Reiner, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
As I was talking to Karen very briefly, I got a glimpse of this wall that was behind her of a variety of games. Is that sort of a montage of the various titles that some of the incredibly large number of titles that you've put out?
Oh yes, that's actually true. We made a very big canvas picture print of a collage of many of our classic titles, and I guess you just got a glimpse of these. 6-7 feet by 6-7 feet
right.
Big canvas.
That's fantastic.
Yes,
I need one of those for my wall.
We even have a little placemats.
Oh, do you really?
Coasters with the same picture, just the game's a bit smaller. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. And behind you there, I see a couple of your. I can see Lord of the Rings above your left shoulder, and Celtis up there, which you won the Spiel des Jahres for, correct?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, I've started to put a few of the classics back onto the wall. You see also there Euphrates and Tigris and
yes.
Samurai, hopefully soon Ra as well coming out from Fantasy Flight.
I'm very excited that Ra is getting a reprint, because that has been out of print for so long that I think this will be a perfect lead into a good question. Once upon a time in the gaming industry here, auction games were a very prevalent part of the hobby, and they seem to have gone away. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a time for mechanisms when they become new, when they become loved by the community, and then the community, the insiders, the gamers move on. So I think we need to differentiate between more insider mechanisms. So today you have the deck building mechanism, for example. And I think auction is also some more sophisticated mechanism in the game, which is more for the gamers. As said, they move on. I think then there are more the mass market, the classical, the wider mechanisms, and they live on because the casual players do not move from one hype or from one fashion style to the next one. There it's more about fun, and we have played that 10 years ago and we still enjoy it. So it's a different approach and different things, but as said, the auction is more challenging, therefore more sophisticated. And I think auctions, particularly with modern art, where I put a lot of different auctions in, is a very good way of causing interaction, bringing people together, also self-balancing, because the money, the prices adjust to whatever the situation is.
Sure.
So I love doing them, but at the moment it's more, this is old-fashioned, so it's very hard to sell them. And if you can't sell them, you better don't make them.
That sort of, I think, leads into what might be some of your new philosophy in game design. Your motto on your website is bringing enjoyment to the people. And you just mentioned the subset of gamers, we'll call them, I don't know, the the hobby gamers as opposed to the mass market gamers. You've had a shift in your design philosophy, I suppose, and maybe output, where it seems like you are not designing the gamers' games so much, but you're designing games for everybody. Does that really fit the motto of what you're going for there?
This has been a somewhat natural development on my and of our side, because we simply learned that we can reach many, many more people by doing simpler games. And I think I've shifted a little bit with my interest as well from the long Euphrates and Tigris games, which I loved to play when I was younger, to today's games where people have less time, people are more pressured, you want to have a quicker dynamics, game has to start very, very quickly, you want to have a highlight very quickly, and then it should be over, and we shouldn't have to read too many rules because we don't have time and nobody likes to read rules. So bringing enjoyment to the people means not bringing enjoyment to a few people, it means trying to reach a lot of different people. And that's not a financial decision. Sales, of course, bring money, but it's more that I see so many people out there who are interested in playing games, but they are not sophisticated gamers. And it doesn't need a very complex game to have lots of play fun. Mm-hmm. Essentially, the more complex you make the game, the more you restrict people, the circle of people who can play it. Yes.
Sure. No, I would agree with that. And I think one of the things I like to look for in game design with particular designers is, and I liken this to music, particular bands have a sound, and I think designers have a style. And I would say that that's probably very fitting of you, where your style, and this is what attracted me to your games early on, was that the rules were very minimalistic typically, and they set up a scenario in which the players could play the players, and they weren't necessarily piloting a game mechanism. Was that an intentional philosophy from you early on, or was that just a development that happened?
Well, as you say, each designer, each artist has his or her own handwriting and style. I have always been a scientist. I studied mathematics. I like the sciences. I still like the sciences. And I think there are two types of people, talking black and white, and not making a value judgment. It's just two different types. You tend towards the one side or the other. The one type is like me, the scientist, the person who tries to reduce redundancy and bring everything down to a few fundamental principles, that makes short rules, that makes very clear handling of games, for example, and also allows you then, on the basis of these few rules, to really engage in what you really want to play, your strategy, your tactics in the game, and to concentrate on this. On the other side, there are the storytellers, those people who create redundancies. They have lots of little details for lots of little aspects in the game. You get very long game rules. Sometimes people say it's very thematic, because for every little thing you have exactly the thing that hits the theme, and you have hundreds of different cards with lots of texts, and it all fits the whole. You have a very rich world, almost like a book, just like a piece of fiction. But at the cost that you have to work through these things, that you have more administration in the game. So it is this science and basic principles versus storytelling and creating a rich world. And there are people who like the one, and there are people who like the other, and that's right, because if everybody did the same number of the same type of games, I think the world would be a much more boring place. And then, of course, it's also interesting because people then can argue and saying, I love this one and I hate this one, and it makes for nice, as long as it's friendly, it makes for nice discussions.
And if we all like the same games, there would be no discussion threads on Board Game Geek, of which there are plenty.
Yes. Yes.
Is there, in that balance of theme and rule simplicity, is there a game of yours or somebody else's that you think hit a perfect balance between theme and playability?
That is very, very hard to pick one, because
it's like asking a favorite child, right?
Yes, exactly. I think people can judge that for themselves, how much degree of kind of abstractness and simplicity they want. I'm very proud. I say that now because I'm working on a few dice games, and I see at the moment, and I see how hard it is to do new dice games. So in hindsight, we're becoming more and more proud of Picomino, the Heckmeck, the chicken, the worm game, because if I've really tried to analyze this, and in a way, so far there was only one basic mechanism for dice in the world, and that is you roll the dice and you go for lots of one type. So I go for lots of fives, or I go for a straight, and I decide what I go for, and then I roll and try to make this end. So the typical Yahtzee, Kniffel, or whatever you call it in the parts of the world where you live. And essentially, when you look at it, a lot of the games, particularly the classical games, the games people play, always went down to this point. You probably know I wrote this book about dice games.
Several of them,
and
actually.
If you look through this, you see there is lots and lots of different variations, the category games, how I call them in the book, and then I don't know how I came up with this mechanism to say, no, you're not going for the same thing. So I'm not trying to go for the category of sixes, but I roll the dice as it is in Picomino, and I decide, okay, this time I take the fours. And once I've taken the fours, I can roll, but the fours are now gone. And so it's kind of if I talk it in scientific nonsense terms, it's kind of orthogonal to the mechanism so far, because you're not going for the same types, you're now going for different types. And that gives you, in my eyes, very exciting definition and decision points, because I know I can only take every number once. So I rolled 2 5s. Do I take the 2 5s, or do I maybe only take 1 2 and hope in a later roll to get 3 5s? Yes. And as the dice diminish, as I take more dice out, it's a decision: when do I jump, when do I take it, and when do I stop? Because if I roll and can't take a new number out, I'm bust.
I think of all the dice games of yours I've played, Ra the Dice Game is easily my favorite, and I think that is because in that game there is no bad roll. There is a choice given by every die, and I just introduced this game to my girlfriend the other day. After finally reacquiring a copy, I sincerely hope someone puts this thing back in print, because it's become very hard to find. And that was exactly what she said. She said, there's no bad turns in this. There's just the how do I want to allocate the dice. As taking what we just talked about with your concepts for dice games, how did you manipulate the Ra game into a dice game? Because it was just it still feels Ra-like with the way the interactions work on the board, but it's done in a completely different way.
Well, that's the ambition I have as a game designer who tries to do innovative things. So if I do a Ra dice game, I'm not replicating the thing and just translating one-to-one the game. What's the point? Yes, the same as you mentioned Lord of the Rings initially. When we had the expansions, it was not just more of the same. There was always a new aspect, one or two completely new features in the expansions, and that is my ambition. And I think what you said about there is no bad roll, I think that's very important. And that's something I expect from a good game, because you see, life is great because we have so many exciting things to do. And when I sit down to play a game, I do not want to be in the situation of saying, I have nothing really good to do. What's the least worst move, least bad move? And this is not how I want to live, and this is not how I want to play games. I want to bite my fingernails, and I want to say, I have so many things to do, and I want to do this, and I hope this one isn't taken away from me. So it's kind of the Lost Cities emergency. And this is what I try to create. So it's not, even if we have dice in the game, it's not, if I roll a high number, it's fine. If I roll a low number, I have been unlucky. No, it is a randomizer, how you have cards or how you have other things in the game. So we need some randomizers. And then it gives the game, the mechanism gives you enough opportunities, whatever comes up, to play the cards, to play the dice in the best way. So the randomizer gives you different routes, but there are no real bad routes and good routes. It's just simply what you make out of it.
I think you actually just encapsulated what I think is your style, and that is this is something that's very much illustrated in a game like Samurai, where and one of my personal favorites is Great Wall of China, where everybody has the same deck or the same tiles, and yet they come out differently for each player. So each player has to plan for what's going to come out and then try to adapt their strategy and hope that the thing that they still want to do is there. That creates for that perfect kind of tension that is missing in a lot of games. That I think that tension is something that gets taken away a little bit by the mechanical nature of some games. Would you agree with that?
It depends. I mean, mechanical, I would say if you have many details and the game becomes very administrative, then it can distract you. I mean, then if you don't really look at it, you say, I'm very busy and we do a lot of things. But if you analyze it, you say, well, I'm just administrating, I'm moving things apart, but how much time do I have to concentrate on the real strategy and on the tactics? However, I would say that because that was my definition of, or my characterization of the scientific type of game, which I believe in because I that's the thing I love. There are other voices who say, but I like this because I have all the details.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's two sides of the same coin, which is very interesting. Yeah. Is there, out of the different mechanics that have come out, so we mentioned earlier, I think we talked briefly about deck building, and there's a trend towards these micro games. Is there any of these popular styles that you see becoming prevalent that you have not designed in that you might like to?
That is a difficult question in a way.
That's the best kind. That's the only kind we ask here.
Because I'm trying to find my own ways and my own routes. So I'm thinking about what can I do to create new trends, to do new things. Of course, you cannot really do that in isolation from the world. So there is glimpsing at the world and looking and analyzing what goes on, but not really in a way, okay, what's out there, what can I copy? There is a trend there, so let me jump onto it. I have done a deck building game and I have found a publisher for it, but it is completely different I would say it is completely different because it has aspects in there which I have not seen before. The deck building is one aspect of the game, but there are other aspects of it. I will not give away what it is about, but you will see it next year on the market. But it wasn't, so to speak, started and saying, all right, there are so many deck building games out there, it's so in, so I need to do one as well. Mm-hmm. It was more that we worked on a new type of competitive game, and suddenly we saw that this is card driven and we can have an evolution by upgrading our cards. And so we slowly meandered towards this is a kind of a deck building, but it is essentially a deck building applied to an already existing base mechanism, which is in a game, and then this is added, so to speak, to it. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's, you're looking at 2017 for that?
Yes.
Oh, that's a long time to wait. Okay.
Well, it's that's how long it takes with publishers. When you give the publishers a game, they've decided to do it, so the editors are now working on it, and then you need to do the graphics and so on and so on and so on. So we will see it next year. For me, it is finished. It is closed. I'm very excited about it. Let's see what comes out. Sometimes the things come out very nicely, and when we are lucky, they are successful. There are many, many different aspects to a successful game. I believe I've done whatever I could do, but we will see.
Okay. So recently you've been, you've had a lot of your games being reprinted, which is great because someone we mentioned earlier, Tigris and Euphrates and Samurai, and then Ra is coming out in the not too distant future. And my friend David Harding at Grail Games has recently done a reprint of Medici as well as Circus Flocati. Yes. So you seem to be able to work with publishers of any size. Is there an advantage to one size or the other? Is there a benefit or something you like about working with a big publisher versus a smaller publisher, or vice versa?
The world of the small publishers and the world of the big publishers is very different. Mm-hmm. But my interest is to get nice, good games to the players, to the people, to bring enjoyment to them. And I put a lot of effort into designing and testing good games. Of course, I am not a publisher, and I will, I think, never be a publisher. I do what I do best, and I always need a competent publisher and an enthusiastic publisher to bring then the creations we make to the market. For me, working with a small publisher is very delightful because the small publishers really have their heart and their enthusiasm in the process. They sometimes are so small that they cannot afford a flop.
Right.
So they must make this successful. They will love it. And if they are professional enough so that the communication and the production process is really good and of high quality, then sometimes that can lead to excellent games. The big publishers have different strengths. They have much better access to complicated tools, plastics, sourcing processes. Of course, they have a better marketing and a stronger positioning of the game in the market. So this helps to bring the games to the people because they can push them more into the market. It's two different sides. With a big publisher, sometimes you have to fight a little bit more to be heard and to get your opinion heard as well. This is essentially a relationship building. It is, I think, easier for me because I'm well known in the industry and people accept that I have some experience in games.
A little bit, yes.
I think it is more difficult for newer, younger, less established designers because the bigger publishers may actually just keep them out of the process and do their thing. And I strongly believe the game becomes better if you have another pair of eyes, the designer eyes, looking and accompanying the process, and particularly looking at things from a functional point of view, that the production process does not get into the way of having the game really run smoothly and functionally complete.
Okay. Is there any one of your games that you think has had a big impact on other designers and other genres? Is there anything that you feel that you did that really set a benchmark for this is how this type of game should be done, or something that really influenced a part of the community?
I would hope that I influence the community, but I'm probably the worst person to judge which are those influences and which are the games which are guiding people, designers, into new directions. If I look back, maybe a slightly different answer to your question, when I look back at the time when we published Ingenious, that was a time when the general philosophy of the publisher was, we don't want any abstract games. Abstract games do not sell. Abstract games do not catch the fantasy and the imagination of the players. So they wanted to stay away from it. But it is, as always, as soon as you have one successful game, then the trend starts. And we have seen these trends in many ways. We have seen it when the trivia games came out with Big Brother and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I don't know what the titles are in America, but you must have.
We have Millionaire, yep.
And then you have lots of these games. And it was the same. We had in this time two successful abstract games. One was Blockers and the other one Ingenious. And I think that started a wave of abstract games. And suddenly today, we have publishers really deliberately asking for, can we not have an abstract game? When you mentioned Celtis as the game of the year, that was actually a point where when I brought the original game, Lost Cities, the board game, to Cosmos, because Cosmos had done the very successful card game, Cosmos actually said, well, we think for our market, it is much better to make that more abstract and to go away from this. Lost Cities is not the richest thematic game, but it has a good feel and it gives you this exploration feel of it. So they said, no, let's do it a little bit more abstract, just gives it a flavor theme, a flavor topic on top of it. And I was very unhappy about that initially because I had done specifically this game as a multiplayer Lost Cities board game. And you cannot do many different ones because that was based on the card principle, but it was adjusted to multiplayers and took the numbers a bit away, because the scoring in the two-player game, you can be more sophisticated. In the multiplayer game, you can't do this. And so when Cosmos wanted to say, we take this somewhere else, I said, well, I've lost my Lost Cities because I can't do another Lost Cities board game. This is the one. And so after long discussions, we actually said, okay, I will allow you, is the wrong point, but I go with your suggestion to do Celtis in Germany, in the German market for Cosmos directly, but everywhere else we will have Lost Cities because that's how I designed it. And then, of course, as you might say, the disaster happened that Celtis won the Game of the Year. And then everybody wanted Celtis.
Right.
And so the only edition of Lost Cities was the American edition. But of course, It's actually very much an up-to-date topic, because now with Cosmos having a partially owned subsidiary in the United States, Thames and Cosmos,
yes.
They just brought out Lost Cities and the Lost Cities board game as the Lost Cities board game.
Yeah.
And so I have the strong wish, and I think I'm working on that wish, that we have the Lost Cities board game also published in Germany and in other countries. And I keep pushing, and it will happen, I think.
It's astounding when we talk about the difference in publishing countries. How much of your catalog has never made it to the United States? You've published roughly 600 games, I believe, including expansions. You've designed that many. I would say if 30% of those have made it here, that would be a large number. Is there a reason that so much of your catalog never makes it here?
A lot of the catalog isn't published in Germany either. It's just my philosophy is, first of all, I'm trying to do and design and create an excellent, good game, which is fun, which brings enjoyment to the people. And then in the second category, I would then look at who is the right publisher, and I would talk to publishers. Of course, in the back of my mind, I would not try to design something which is not sellable.
Sure.
So it's not, the money is not in the foreground, but there's no point in designing a game which nobody wants to publish, because that doesn't achieve anything.
Right.
So it is more with getting published. But then I would talk to various publishers, and then sometimes somebody in America picks it up, sometimes somebody in Germany picks it up. Of course, once I have invested such a lot of energy in creating this intellectual property, I will, of course, try to place it in many different markets, because why only create for one market?
Sure.
And there's also a preference of different markets for different games. And so some are more picked up in Japan because they're the abstract, the smaller card games maybe, or they're in America. I mean, as you mentioned it, I'm very, very happy that Fantasy Flight, now Asmodee ARM, is actually taking a lot of my games into their classic series.
Right, it's wonderful.
You've mentioned some of them. That is really wonderful, because I think these classic ones deserve to be there, and I'm very happy that they're back on the market, in a big market. And of course, if they are in English, then a lot of people can play them all over the world. And of course, Fantasy Flight is also set up very nicely to do lots of sub-editions in different languages. Right. So all of this essentially says, it's not my direction where I want to push the game. I will talk to people, and they choose different ones. But there is not, there are so few in America. There are also so few in Japan. There are so few in China. There are so few in Poland. There's no country that has it all. Right. It's where the paradises are. There are more games, and Germany is certainly a paradise of games. But recently, Poland has become a little paradise of games as well. And I've lots of games published in Poland these days, and it's a great growing market, and there are a lot of great people there playing games very enthusiastically. It's a bit underdeveloped market, so there are not really the gamers there. So we are on a level which is probably more suitable to me, because I don't have the strong hobby market, but a market who like nice novelty games, but not too complex.
Sure. Let's go back to bringing enjoyment to the people. In today's society, every person you see walking around is carrying a cell phone in their hand. And in I want to say it was the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s. My years are way off on this, but I remember getting the Brain Games game for the Nintendo, the Game Boy, the DS, I believe it was. Not long after that is when cell phone gaming really started to come into prevalence, and you jumped into that very hard. You had a lot of ports of your games go over, so Ra and Tigris and Euphrates and several others, but then you began creating games specifically for that media. What led you in that direction?
I have always had an arm for and an understanding for technology, for programming. I mean, I studied a little bit of computer sciences at university, even and mathematics is close to it anyway. When I then worked in the industry world, in the banking, I actually worked in IT. I managed IT department. Really? I was in charge of all of operations, which encompassed IT. So it's something which is not alien to me. Okay. I've not kept up with the newest developments. I couldn't sit down and program anything these days, but I have programmed myself, and I speak a little bit the language, and I know how to write specifications, so I can talk to programmers. Sure. And I think that's very important. So then these new abilities came up, and one has to see the door into the cell phones is the biggest door we have ever opened to reach people with games. There are more than 1 billion people on this planet who have a smartphone in their pocket.
That's astounding.
So there is more 1 billion people who have games in their pocket. But these are not the hobby gamers who want to read 20 pages of Euphrates and Tigris rules. These are the people who want to open this thing and want to see how it goes, want to be fascinated by it. So I see it and I play it. For me, it was fascinating to be able to reach such a lot of people, but it was also a new challenge because you have to design for a very small board, meaning screen. You have to design in a way that you have very few ways of inputting things. Yes, you touch a little bit, but it's very small. And you need to do something which is essentially obvious, but still makes for an exciting, addictive gameplay. I think that suits me very well because that's exactly what I try to do. Reduce to the essential and work out the core of the gaming. And I became very fascinated and spent a lot of time for quite a while designing these games. The ports are, I mean, taking a successful game, porting it over is not a big challenge because you select those games which are suitable for the screens, and of course with the tablets coming, everything made much easier. But designing specific games for the online for the cell phone fascinated me a lot, as I say, and I've tried a lot of different routes, and I learned a lot from this approach for the other types of games I'm doing. Because suddenly you see that's the way you can, in a very minimalistic way, could produce a lot of fun. And it doesn't hurt if you know how to produce fun. Even if you then have more opportunities to do this.
Right. I found Cardbuster to be maddening. Oh, that game. I would play that thing relentlessly. And I felt like it mocked me at a certain point. It had that nice addictive quality. Do you think there's a market out there for slightly more complex, let's call them the gamers phone games? Something that's a little deeper and has more of the bigger rule set?
The cell phone or the mobile market is not an easy market. It is always the same. You look at the markets, and suddenly the market actually became very accessible for the publishers. Any hobby programmer could become a publisher. You pay your, I don't know, $75 or whatever, and you get your toolkit, and then you can release your games in that market. Releasing the game in the market, however, is the same as if you become a hobby publisher in the real world, because then you have your garage full of produced games, and nobody buys it. Right. The same thing happens here. If you put them into the App Store, if you put them into the Android stores, then how do you get seen? And then we had the whole shift towards freemium plays, that everything is free to play. So how do you stand out from the crowd? How can you ever charge anything for a game where you, of course, put in a lot of effort? And then how do you get your money back? So the advertising comes in. It is a very challenging market, because opening the marketplace is not equivalent to selling a lot of things. So we had a lot of changes in this process, which I found very, very exciting and very, very resourceful, rich of learning for me. Because suddenly we get into, today's world is really, I want everything for free now.
Yes. Instant gratification. Yeah.
This is the philosophy. And you cannot avoid, whatever you do, facing this proposition and how you deal with this proposition. Yes. And so I think the market for the cell phones is difficult. Now back to your question, you say, can you do some more sophisticated things? I think it would be very difficult to create something from scratch and make it very big, unless you have a very big marketing budget and really going big, like with the big online games, yes? And you spend many, many millions, and then you advertise it and you push it, and then you have a lot of turnover. I think the more promising route is to start with something which is already well known. So you take a game which has its group of followers, its fans, and then to tell them, okay, and now it's also available there. I think then you can charge reasonable prices. And because you can charge reasonable prices, you can actually make a bigger effort to really create something valuable and put a lot of resources and a lot of money into the production. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have a rich intellectual property, you will find your followers, you can make a good product. This creates more followers. And that's, I think, the success spiral which works, starting with something already there. If you say start from fresh, completely new, I think that's much more challenging.
Gotcha. Okay. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Cardboard Insanities Game of the Week. Sometimes when I play new games, every once in a while, I feel like I'm transported back to my early days in board gaming.
Is that right?
Yeah, like another good example, Warehouse 51.
Mm-hmm.
Warehouse 51 felt like it was taking me back to the heyday when auction games were a big deal, and when there was a less is more thing going on with board games. Now it's basically just more is more, and you get boxes full of stuff.
And the more stuff.
Yeah, and more rules. And so when I found out that Reiner Knizia had a new game out, it's not new this year, but it came out at the end of last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is new in America this year. I believe it was available in Germany in 2014 or 2015, yeah. But it's new to us in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, I'm like, okay, let's check this out. The man has not put out a new game here in quite a while. He's still prolifically releasing games in Germany and in Europe, but we just don't seem to get any of those here. And most of them are more family-oriented fare, so they wouldn't be the kind of thing we'd be looking for. Right. They'd be good for like Herc or Colin to play with their kids and families. So when I got news of Orongo being available, and David Harding from Grail Games gave it the official thumbs up. He too is a Knizia fanboy. I knew right away we had to give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
So this game to me feels like if you would have told me this came out around the same time as the classic Knizias like Ra and Through the Desert and some of those, I'd say, yep, absolutely, after having played it. But let's start at the beginning before I get too far ahead of myself, because I'm like, let me tell you what I think about it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what type of game Orongo is. So 2 to 4 player game. The rule book, I believe, says 45 minutes on the box.
Mm-hmm.
Ages 10 and up. Nonsense. The illustrious Franz Vollwinkle has done the art, which I think...
He has so much artwork.
Good Lord. I don't know how many games that man has done illustrations for. But this is published by Ravensburger. And again, 2 to 4 player game, and Orongo is basically an auction game. If you're familiar with, and I know you're not, Horsey, but for anybody that's familiar with like the Knizia history of games, you'll hear some things in here that you'll go, oh, okay, these, you can see where he grabbed mechanics from some other games and sort of put them together. Okay. So this feels very much him. But each player is trying to build moai on Easter Island. Right, and the moai, the merrier. I think I've made that joke on the Easter Island game review. And there's a closed economy in the game. So there's a certain number of seashells. There are the 48 of these really nice looking little seashells. That's the currency in the game. That's what you're going to bid with. And what's in the game at the beginning will more or less be in the game at the end. No new money ever comes in. It just sort of shifts its way around, a la Hollywood blockbuster. Traumfabrik. Yeah. Right? Bad pronunciation.
No, but you're doing all right.
Okay. So essentially, depending on the number of players you have, each player is going to get a certain number of shells, 24 in a 2-player game, 16 in a 3-player game, 12 in a 4-player game, and then each player is going to get some moai, 10 in a 2-player, 6 in a 3-player, 5 in a 4-player. And then there'll be one moai that goes in the top right corner of the board. That is the ceremonial moai. And it is essentially a race to build that last moai. So it says the oldest player takes the amulet. It's the start player marker. And is going to start the bidding in the first round. Now, the board is a series of hexagons, sort of reminiscent of Through the Desert. But what's going to happen is each round there are 40 of these tokens that match spaces. There are 60 tokens that match the spaces on the board. Right? This is kind of hard to explain without a visual. But the hexagons have, some of them have a picture in them with a number, and the other ones just sort of have like a sort of light illustration of palm trees. Right. There's 60 tiles that match every tile space on the board, every numbered space. So those tiles get shuffled up, and at the beginning of the game, depending how many players you have, a certain number of them are flipped up and put on the board. So in a 2 or 3 player game, 6 tiles go on the board. In a 4-player game, 8 tiles go on the board. Then essentially what happens is it's a simultaneous blind bid. What you're bidding for is turn order to be able to place your own markers, which are these really cool little see-through chips that you're essentially going to put on the board over top of the spaces. So closed fisted bid, everyone bids simultaneously. High bid gets to go first. The first player gets to place 3 of their tokens on the board. Second player 2. Third player gets to place 1, or third or fourth player gets to place 1. And then if someone bids 0 shells, they get to take everything that's in the reef. So the reef area in the beginning will have a couple shells, depending how many are left over. The only way you ever get more money back in this game is if you bid 0, then you get to take what's in the reef. And
the reef is replenished as we're bidding round for round.
The high bidder actually puts their bid into the reef.
Okay.
And second, third place, and fourth place, if no one bids 0, everyone else takes their bids back. So only the first player actually pays their bid. So this thing will get at least 1 shell in it basically every turn. Again, you're going to, depending on your turn order there, you're going to place either 3, 2, or 1 of these little colored markers. 0 if you bid 0. If you bid 0, you don't get to place anything. And what you're trying to do is sort of create paths from a coastal space that has a palm tree, and you're trying to connect some of the other spaces on the board. So, for instance, there's some spaces that have, looks like a sort of a rock outcropping. If you connect one of those to a coastal space, a continuous line of your pieces, your little chits, to a coastal space, you can build one of your moai on the coastal space. When you build a moai, you have to put your shell, one or more shells, on the spaces that you have used as a resource to sort of show that the resource has been spent. So, again, in this situation, the rock outcropping only requires 1 space. Lots of other ones require 2. There's a bird and a birdman. So if you have a bird and a birdman in the same cluster of tokens with a coastal space, you can make a moai. There's a god and a temple. And the other thing you do is you can connect 2 of the sweet potatoes
Some kind of tubers.
Yeah. Yuccas. I don't know. I'm not sure what grows on Easter Island. I'm not a botanist, man. I'm a podcaster. So you can build a moai by essentially completing sort of a recipe, almost a destination, thinking Ticket to Ride style.
Right.
And every time you do that, though, money comes out of the game, and it gets placed on the board to show that these spaces have been used. So again, the game is basically a race to build that last moai. You have to build through all your moai and then build that last one. It isn't entirely possible and very likely that at some point in the game you will build multiple moai in a turn.
Yes, you've done that successful several times.
My mom did it in the game we played with her.
I know. She thought she was well behind, and then boom, boom, boom.
Right, one turn, 3 moai.
3 moai.
Right, and that's kind of what you're trying to do. Sometimes you're trying to set up. You give yourself a lot of options, and then you will hopefully be able to drop a couple moai in one turn.
Right.
But again, as soon as that last moai is built, that person is the winner. So there's no scorekeeping in this thing. There's no multiple rounds, sort of like Ra, where you have the different epics.
Right.
This game is very straightforward. The playing time says, I think, 45 to 60 minutes, which is very, very accurate.
I would say so.
Yep. Now, we've played this game 2 and 3 players so far. And why don't you go first and tell the wonderful listeners what you think of Orongo?
Orongo. I thought it played very well as a 2-player game.
Surprisingly so.
Surprisingly so. Whenever we're playing a game that's 2 to 4, you never know how it scales.
Right.
And this one definitely plays well. As a 2-player, I enjoy playing it with 3.
Yes.
I'd love to play it with 4 just to have the full complement and see how it plays out. I thought it played well at 2 or at 3.
The thing that we found was very interesting is that a 2 and 3 player game felt almost the same.
Yes.
Which was very odd. I expected the 3-player game to feel much more crowded, but it really didn't. There's
really
plenty
wasn't.
of options. That's the thing.
So,
if
which
you
makes
build
me
well,
wanna,
there's plenty of options.
Which makes me want to play this with 4.
Yeah. I wish we would have had the opportunity to do it before doing this review, but we just couldn't make it work. But as the majority of the games that we play are 2 players, and we try to focus on games that are good for 2 players, this one definitely fits that bill.
Oh, it definitely does. What I like about it is it's another one of those games where you have to pay attention what your opponents are doing.
Yes.
Because like you had stated before, you can try and set up the board in such a fashion that you can take multiple moai in one turn. Now, the most pieces that you can place down are 3. If you're the winner, you know you will have 3 markers that you can put down.
Right.
So those 3 markers would have to connect different areas. So as you're playing it, you have to pay attention to what your opponent's doing because you want to interrupt that flow.
Right.
So there's times when you don't just concentrate on completing your recipe and just doing your own thing. It's like, no, you really have to pay attention to what your opponent's doing, because if I just let you go ahead and do your thing, you can set it up and boom, in one full sweep, put 3, 4 moai out there. And that's just not acceptable. No, not in this house.
Not.
No.
Results in a table flip.
Exactly. So I like that because it keeps you very engaged in the game. And there's definitely a little bit of take that as you're closing off somebody's.
But, sure. Blocking you can absolutely block in this game.
You need to block.
Yep.
You need to block. So not just you're trying to get your moai out there, but you have to pay attention and potentially block roads. I know the first game that we played, you managed to get this great wall halfway through the board, and I was completely devastated because I'm like, now what am I going to do?
Right. I bisected the board so you couldn't connect things.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the game is like trying to block off key spaces. It's very interesting looking at the layout of this because the island is almost shaped like a triangle.
Yes.
But it's not an equilateral triangle. It's one angle is very sharp. So there's much less spaces on one end of the island than there are at the other.
Yeah.
Now, if you happen to be clustered down there, you have a chance to do okay and maybe without interference because there's a lot of stuff that's connected down there. But there's a couple limiting factors to that. One, you can't build through one of the hexes that has a picture in it until the tile is there. So the game has its own blocking going on.
It does.
And 2, you can't build a moai, and you can't even place the tokens if you don't have the shells to pay to use the tokens right away. So you can't just lay them out there and go like, okay, next turn when I have shells, I'll build a moai. You're not even allowed to place those. So in a lot of auction games, you come to a spot where you're like, well, I know I need to win this thing, and if I win this thing, then that'll set me up really good. So I'm just going to go all in and spend a turn or two recovering money. You can't do that in this game. No,
you can't do that. You really have to manage multiple aspects of the game.
Yeah.
You have to manage your money. You have to manage how you're building your path. You have to pay attention to what your opponent's doing. You have to make sure you have enough money to actually pay up and then have some money to continue playing.
Yep.
Because you could... I know in one of the games that you and I played, I was looking at my shells and I'm like, I'm perfectly set up to win this game and I can't pay for it.
Right.
And I had to delay it by one round.
Yep.
I ended up winning that one and you were going to flip the table, but
that was the one where you kept I think you were pulling shells out of reserve. Because it's the only way to describe your cheating.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had them in my pockets as
blatant cheating.
Mm-hmm. But I love that about this game.
Yeah.
So
it's the fact that the tiles come out differently every game creates a limitless amount of replayability.
Right.
There is a lot of room for strategy. I'd say it's, even though new tiles come out every round, the game is more strategic than it is tactical. Mm-hmm. Because you really have to like plan to work the long game. You have to sort of see like, and that's the interesting thing too, as more tiles are on the board, what will likely come out starts to become like okay, there's a better chance that this tile that I want to come out will come out next.
Right.
And so you can start to plan for those things. Like you can start to build yourself a network and to plan for later auctions. So you go like, okay, I know in probably 2 turns I should have everything I need there, and I need to make sure I can win that, because if I can't win that one, then she's going to win that, or someone else is going to win it, and I'm definitely not going to get what I want. So you have to play long term in this, just like Raw, just like, I mean, really any auction game, but this one does an excellent job of creating that sort of tension throughout the duration of the game.
Managing all these different aspects of the game.
And I did not think this would work well at all for 2 players, and I was really, really surprised. It's a very good 2-player game.
It's very fun.
It's tense. It's tense. Anything you don't like about the game?
I can't think of anything right now. It's like, this is really...
I can think of 2 things.
Okay.
One, I wish the seashells laid flatter.
Oh, yes, that's true. We did talk about that.
The seashells are so nice. They're actually too nice. They really need a flat edge so that they can just lay on the board.
Yeah, that really is.
It's cosmetic, but it gets to be a real PETA because you have to place them very, very, very carefully. And that leads to number 2, is that towards the end of the game, the board is very busy.
Right.
Very busy. So, because then you have the moai all around the outside of the island, and it gets very, very busy. So you have to... It's a double-edged sword with the shells. If they laid flat, they'd be much easier to place. But as they're not, they roll around, and then you start bumping into things, and it can turn into chaos in a hurry. That's the only complaint. Just a cosmetic complaint.
But it's like, you see, I was getting so excited about talking about the game that
you forgot all about it.
I forgot all about it because I really enjoy the play.
Yeah, I think so too.
But you're right. It would be helpful if they had a flat side so they wouldn't roll off. But
if my biggest complaint about a game is something cosmetic that really doesn't impact anything, then I can say very clearly that the game's a winner. How many seashells out of 10?
How many seashells out of 10? I haven't done this in a while.
I know. Surprise!
Boy.
I ambushed you.
You did.
Like you didn't see it coming.
I'm going to give this a 9.
A 9. I will go 8.752.
8.752. That's very precise.
Oddly specific.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to take off like a little bit for the seashell.
Okay.
The seashell endeavor. I think it's really, really, really good. I think I wish it was a tad more jerky. It's oddly not very jerky, but that might change with a 4-player game. I don't know.
I mean, yes, you can block people, and you should block people, but it doesn't feel like in your face.
It's not as crucial as Through the Desert, where the blocking in Through the Desert is violent.
Yeah.
Like, it is catastrophic when you get blocked out of something and through the desert. This one isn't, because there's always options.
Well, it's because...
Unless you've played really badly, I think.
Yeah, because with every round you have more tiles coming out,
Right.
and there's more possibilities.
Exactly.
That even though you may have gotten kind of cut off in one of the corners,
Yep.
oh, now there's tiles coming out on the opposite end of the island, and you have a chance to build anew.
Yep. But this one plays very quick, so that's that's a minor complaint. It's still confrontational enough, but I think the difference between this and Through the Desert is that in Through the Desert the board shrinks. In this game, the board actually grows.
Yes,
because you have more potential spaces to play in.
That's true.
So, a wonderful, I don't know, calling back to the golden days of gaming from Dr. Reiner Knizia on this one. This feels like one of his classic designs.
It sure does.
And he could put these out all the time, and I would buy everything he put out like this, because for me these are the perfect length, the perfect weight. It's on essentially 3 regular sized pieces of paper that I think if you really wanted to, you could condense probably into one.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we have the Ravens of 3 Sahasri sitting on the table here. That's this little pamphlet with 9,000 words in it. That's impossible to read. I read these rules in about 5 minutes and was like, okay, I can play. Let's do it.
We're good.
So, from a man who has a wonderful track record of outstanding games, this is just another outstanding game.
It's a great game. Yeah.
So, big thumbs up from us on Orongo from Ravensburger and Dr. Reiner Knizia, or should I call it Orido?
Oh, no. No, you really shouldn't.
Orido.
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
Okay.
She's at it again.
Come on.
She got a face full of candy.
You could have waited just maybe a minute.
I could have, but if I did, we wouldn't have this gem coming out of your mouth right now.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Mrs. Oshansky.
Yep. Oh, my goodness.
So I hope everybody enjoyed part 1 of the Reiner Knizia interview.
I hope so.
And I hope you guys enjoyed the Orongo review. It's a great game, man. It's like getting in a time machine, playing a game like that, and going back to when I first started playing games.
I love a game that you can pick up that's brand new, and you're reading in a short time. You're like, yep, this makes sense. Let's go.
Very rarely can you do that with new games. It is just a thing that does not exist anymore.
Yeah. It's like, I don't need a video review. I don't need to YouTube it. No, this actually makes sense. The rules are great.
Yep.
They're very precise.
It's super
clean. I can sit down and play this.
Yeah. Yeah. This is just a thing that doesn't happen anymore, and it's very nice to see. I think that's. Hold on, let me compose this thought.
Okay.
I think this is part of. I've talked about this evolution of board games. Things like this almost don't belong anymore because.
What do you mean?
Well, because board games have gotten very often unnecessarily complex.
Just for the sake of complexity and parts?
Yeah, and a game like this is so out of the norm today. Just looking at some of the things on that shelf right there that we can see. Octodice, a simple dice game that has way more rules than this game does.
Yeah.
Marco Polo, great game, but a lot of rules. Millennium Blades, just tons of data on the cards and a million moving parts within it. Pax Porfiriana, I'm not even going to talk about that pile of crap. Great design, not for Steve.
You're not at all bitter about that.
Hours of my life I will never see again. There's just so many games that are just busy and full of rules and little ambiguities and edge cases, and there's no edge cases in here. There's no what if this thing and this thing happen? No, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. But it doesn't in no way diminishes from the gaming experience. In fact, it makes it better because you don't have to think about the rules. That's what makes Concordia so good. Concordia is so clean I can't even fathom how you could have a question about that game or this game. Like,
Right.
how can you possibly have a rules question? And that's something
You
that's
shouldn't.
missing from games.
You shouldn't. And that's what the games that I like the most are very clean, very, very precise.
Yeah.
But take a long time to master.
Yes.
It's like I can
You
put
can
it
play
on the
this game
table,
a million times, and
the outcome will be different.
right now that you've played Ra properly and you have an appreciation for Ra, a game like Ra, I've played Ra literally 40 times, which is not a lot in the grand scheme of, if you look at Board Game Geek, how much Ra some people play. I could play. I mean, I could have a game like this, a game like Ra. I could, honest to God, I think legitimately, I could get our collection down to 50 games. 50 games that I could play forever.
Yeah. I'm not
without question.
quite there yet.
That's fine.
I'm not quite there
No,
yet.
that's fine. But I know there's like I just looking over there. There's like a lot of, and this is the small shelf. There's like a lot of games on there that I could just do without. I just don't. Why?
Right.
Just why? I just don't understand the. But this is one of the things that makes Reiner Knizia such a classic designer. Just like with Bruno Faiduti. These are guys that don't buy into this, I don't know, million moving parts and all this chrome and nonsense. These are guys that are like, let's just get to the game. If you have to think about the rule book, you're not in the game.
And have good player interaction too.
And that's what it's all about.
Because you need that.
Right. Those are the things that drive a good game.
At least in my book, it's like if you want me to enjoy gaming, I know we have some games that are almost like multiplayer solitaire, and I still enjoy them.
They have their place for
but,
sure.
Yes, but the majority of the time, what I really enjoy is a game that engages me and the players at the table.
Right. Well, you and I play Sans Souci. I like that game a lot.
I like it.
However,
I like it a lot.
It doesn't scratch the same boxes that something like Orongo does.
No.
And it just never will. There's nothing wrong with it. And sometimes you don't want to play a game where you're at each other's throat. Like sometimes you're like, I just want to play something like where I have to feel like I made good choices. And you do when you play Sans Souci. You definitely have to make good choices.
Right.
But sometimes you just want to be left the hell alone. You just do your thing.
Yep.
I'll do my thing. We don't have to. No one will be.
It definitely.
I don't need a stressor.
It has its place.
Oh, for sure. But for the most part, this is the kind of game I like.
Yes.
So that'll wrap it up for this week because we've gone so long today. I think it's just is what it is, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Damn it.
It was well worth it.
It's worth it.
I was whispering.
Because
Because
reasons. Later.